Who wants to ask the first question? We'll try to keep the answers tight so we get a number of them. Please, sir.
Yeah, I'm Rajneesh from India. I'm visiting the Geek channel. My question, in the morning you mentioned that the ultimate aim of Cisco is to be the #1 IT and communications company.
Yes.
And you have been working with an existing partner ecosystem which we know have worked out well for you all throughout the years. Now, once we are talking about a paradigm shift in the partner ecosystem in terms of partners going into a hybrid IT kind of business model, and you have been quite ruthless today morning. So, keeping that in mind, in this journey towards #1, how many of that, you got the number 67,000 active partners, how many of them do you think would really be able to move with you or sort of help Cisco in achieving that #1 position in IT and communications as a company, and how many would fall by the wayside, and would you be ruthless enough to, if necessary, leave aside a large part of the partner ecosystem who might have helped you till now, but maybe the journey further might not be relevant that much?
So the answer is no to your question. Next question. A little bit of humor. I think I'm getting better about it. So first of all, we are a family. You need to understand that's what's different about Cisco. We have been the #1 rated partner organization in IT and communications for over a decade, almost every periodical review there is. Secondly, you owe an obligation to your family who brought you where you are to help them transition for the future. Now that doesn't mean that they don't have to earn it. They clearly have to transition, and that's what we're sharing today. But unlike many of our peers in the industry, we are going to say you either make this cut or you don't survive or threaten our partners. They are family. We'll make this transition together. The majority will transition over. The exciting thing is that you're the #1 IT player and the #1 communications. There are dramatically different roles that every partner can play. So I think you will see more of an evolution of our partner system. Some of the partners staying where they are and candidly not evolving as much. And you'll see some new partners come into that scale. But it will be an and move forward as opposed to a brutal consolidation of our partners. My view on our industry and the competitors, reverse. We want to be very candid. We think there's a consolidation coming in this industry. We think it's going to be brutal first in communications. You've already seen the signs of it. And then in IT, I think part of the reason you're going to see the consolidation is architecture does win. And if you're not already the #1 player in commercial and enterprise and service provider, it's hard to make that transition. If you're not the #1 player in communications and one of the top 5 or 6 in IT, hard to make it. And it's an IP world, which we have the expertise in. So that's the transition we're going to try to make. On that versus our competitors, I'm going to be a little bit more direct than before, because very often competitors are making statements either about their capability or how they're beating Cisco, or a new technology and how it's going to beat Cisco. And you're going to see us debunk those much earlier on. Pretty aggressive with competitors, kind of fun. We'll treat them fair in a way that we would not have any problem if they did to us. We're going to be tough. Please, all the way in the back far right.
Good. Bob DeMarza with CRN US.
Yes, Bob.
John and the other executives as well, Gary and Rob. What fundamentally has to change inside Cisco and within the partner ecosystem to make the gains you want within the mid-market customer segment? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So CRN has always been a very good challenger to us. I think we probably agree this was the most aggressive we've been in 4 years in terms of messaging. Each one of us is going to answer this in 30 seconds. Rob, your view?
We need to view our partners in the mid-market as an extension of our sales force, train them, enable them, and market with them, create millions of leads that will enable us to take advantage of the opportunities we have in this market. It should be our fastest growing market. It is our fastest growing market. And in mid-market, we solve all of the problems of simplifying IT.
Training and enablement, I couldn't agree more, than because of Cisco Capital and that helped them make this transition as their customers are changing the way they want to buy stuff.
And I thought about your question you asked me earlier. I think you're right. I think the majority of mid-market CIOs and CEOs don't know how serious we are about this market. The good news is we're #1 player with 22% market share. I think we have to send a consistent message through our partners into the market. We're not only committed to this, our goal is to take it over 50% market share, and you're not going to see us dabble with it the way that perhaps some of our peers are. We're all in on mid-market. That's also where the job growth is going to occur. Please.
You mentioned earlier this morning, the Internet of Everything being a $14.4 trillion opportunity. Sort of how did you come up with that staggering number?
Well, the exciting part is that isn't available market, that is profits for customers. And we did it by individual industries. We've most recently taken that from a study of 150 companies to 7,501 companies, and it looks like the number's conservative. We broke it down by company type, we broke it down by industry type, we broke it down by geography, and as you saw, manufacturing is probably going to be the first one in for a whole bunch of reasons. You saw that in the demo, but it does affect every industry. The second thing is when I talk to CEOs, not government leaders, but CEOs about this a year and a half ago, they were interested, curiosity-wise, but didn't really care. You talk to them now, every industry CEO gets it. And so if profits are $14 trillion, you can imagine what the available market is and the differentiation. And you saw today, it will affect everything from supply chain to operations to retail. This year, the run rate is probably 1.2 already. And you know, if this is a 10-year projection, it means that was too conservative. And that means with less than half of the addressable market even getting any attention. So I think that number's going to end up being conservative, but one I feel comfortable with. Please.
So, last one. When you were in India, you said that, few Indians would really step into your shoes and, that you would be shortlisted, but mostly warrior and founding party. For the success in program. How close are you? What is the status of that?
Okay, so 3 questions. The first is that in terms of succession for the CEO, we outlined last summer that I would stay in the job 2 to 4 years. I've got to earn that every day, like each of us do. That we would have a first wave of peers for that and a second wave more over time, probably second generation. Obviously, you've got 2 world-class presidents here, and we've got a very deep and wide bench. We are going to give no updates on that until we're 6 months of making the transition. In terms of talent out of India, as you all know, we've got over 10,000 people in India, and a large part of our population here in San Jose, our headquarters, comes with a background from Asia, with a large part from India. Pankaj and Padmashri are world class. Now our goal is to keep them all, so it isn't a question of who's the one leader. It's how do the 3 of us get an environment that through these transitions we don't lose our key players.
You were pretty tough on the competition this morning, very candid. So I feel empowered to ask you, do you have a reaction to Huawei's capitulation in the U.S. market? Do you see in that a microcosm of the way Cisco has now positioned itself against the competition?
So as it relates to competition and indirectly to China, I think there's an opportunity to rebuild relationships both at the country level between the U.S. and China and Canada at the business level. There are a lot of partners that we're going to work on getting closer to in China, and they'll have to make those decisions. Huawei is going to be a competitor, period. In terms of our overall approach to the market, we speak on our ability to deliver to customers, our integrity. We've been ranked at the very top of integrity in every survey done for a decade plus. Huge advantage to us. But the key takeaway is, it doesn't matter if your competition was HP, who everybody thought was going to beat us 2 years ago, or Vayu, who was a new challenger, or Huawei, or forgetting either Juniper, who people are out on a point in time. We're going to not be tough in our comments on the competitors, we're going to be tough in the market. And architecture wins here. And that's what you're seeing start to change. Where that was negotiable in some people's mind a year or 2 ago, architecture, much lower operating cost, much higher in terms of the ability to meet your customer needs. And so I think you're going to see a consolidation occur here. How many of you would agree that the networking industry is going to consolidate? Just out of show of hands. How many would disagree? How many of you think the IT industry is going to consolidate? How many think not?
I understand that.
Okay, we found the watch over the next.
You are too fast, Mr.
Sure.
You are too fast. We can
I apologize. My wife is a speech therapist, and she calls me her only failure in life. And the more relaxed I get, the faster I talk with a southern accent. So just hold your hand up and say, John, slow down. Because when I get relaxed and excited, I talk faster, not slower. And I will try to do that. Did you put that in on your feedback this morning? The reason I ask is I read 200 of them, and one of them said, John, you're speaking too fast again. Okay, next question.
It would help us if you give us your name and where you're
Please.
from.
I'm Israel from Syria in Brazil, and it's been a year since you put together 47 different programs into just one, focused on in-service. And how do you evaluate the transformation that we're making in relationship between Cisco and partners and in market offers?
Rob, you want to take a crack
I
at it?
just want to make sure I understood the transition of 47 programs in
Cisco's.
Yeah, the announcement that you made.
Services channel program.
I think we've made a lot of progress there. We announced a lot of things a year ago, not just the consolidation of the services partner programs into one, made it a lot simpler. I haven't talked to any partners here who raised it as an issue like they did a year ago, and I've done a couple of, we do partner executive exchanges, I've done a couple of those, and they're really happy with that, as well as what we did with something we called a CCW, the Cisco Connected Workspace, and that's implemented almost 100% now, and partners are seeing huge advantages from that. 80% less touch as orders are processed, 200% improvement in throughput in terms of how fast things go through. So just a lot of progress in general with the partner things that we did from the services point of view a year ago. And there's more stuff this year, so hopefully you have the services breakout.
Okay, but what else do we need to improve now, 1 year after?
Well, I think we need to continue to focus on the enablement piece of our partners, and as Edison pointed out this morning, continue to help them through the transitions that they need to make so that they can be thoughtful about, am I willing to make that investment, and once they commit, then bringing them along. And you'll hear a lot more about that, I think, is it tomorrow that it's?
That's right.
Yeah, it's
tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
It's the Jean-Yves from France. And the part of the software is bigger and bigger on the hardware industry. What has this changed in Cisco's organization?
So the question is, as it relates to software, what does this change in our organization? And it's becoming more and more prominent, at least in many people's perspective, by the direction of the industry. First is we will frame it in terms of how it's going to be software plus silicon plus hardware plus services, and it's about programmability throughout the network and $180 billion install base. Secondly, we're going to set very specific goals, which forces you to think out of the box in terms of how you're going to get from $6 billion in software revenue today to $12 billion. And it will be part of a strategy. And remember, 12 billion is the third or fourth largest software company in the world. So we clearly are setting aggressive goals on it. And it means we're going to have to recruit and develop, both through acquisition and individual recruits, more software expertise. Maybe to the indirect part of the question, Rob, when you really talk about areas like software-defined networks, how do we see that? Where does it fit into our strategy and direction?
And I would remind everyone that on the engineering side of Cisco, around 82% of our engineering talent is actually in the business of developing software. So we develop silicon, we develop processors, obviously the systems that encompass them, but most of the engineering is actually software work. And then we actually work very closely with Gary's and Edzard's now services team to build capabilities to bring that to market. In the future, you'll see Cisco more focused on the platform, a software platform that enables us to tie infrastructure to applications. Padma Sri Warrior will cover this topic tomorrow, and I think you'll find her conversation extremely interesting. So we do think that software plays a greater role in our future. We have a very big software portfolio in our collaboration products. We have a big software portfolio in our new Videoscape platform, which is used to create experiences for consumers. And we have a software business that's very rich in our security business as well. So I'd actually suggest that the best thing that I would suggest for everyone here is that Padma Sri Warrior will talk more about this platform in the middle, which enables us to easily connect applications to infrastructure. And for us, this is a very big opportunity.
Connect or develop application. You are kindly on the scale of
Yes.
applications. So your platform today is to connect to infrastructure, but tomorrow it could be perhaps develop applications. Whereas not the develop application for infrastructure
Right,
and
so-
develop application for application.
This is a very important question, and I'd like to clarify this. Collaboration is a focus for us on the application side. Videoscape, which is a consumer system for presenting entertainment content to the consumer, is a application focus for us. But generally, what we're going to do is leverage software tied tightly to our systems and ASICs to help enable traditional applications, to help enable new classes of applications, such as those developed under HTML5 and other new class of web applications, to absolutely enable the Internet of Things applications that will evolve. And we want one infrastructure that's easily tied to those various classes of applications. That's what Cloud Industry will lay out. That's our software aspiration.
So if you watch where the Internet of Everything is going, we started with smart connected communities 5 years ago, 4 years ago, smart grid, 2 years ago, connected industries. Those were what I would call not thought leadership, but those were our pilot areas to go after. And just using smart grid as an example, we're already writing applications, as are our customers and our partners, to the architecture that way. So you're going to see continuous movement here. Off to a great start out.
I really liked your ecosystem vision and wasn't surprised that you bridged from there to the culture of execution, because obviously there's a large gap between that vision and dominance of the IT industry. What do you see as the greatest challenges in getting customers and partners and capital markets to see the benefits of a multifaceted, cross-segment approach to IT?
So I'm going to take the first part, which is actually the easier. That's the vision and strategy. And as one of my top engineers said to me the other day, again, high risk, he said, vision and strategy, jobs for amateurs, executions for professionals. And so I'm going to ask the professional to answer how we're going to execute and prioritize on. And I always say that half humorous is true in many ways. Our vision and strategy, I think, is going to happen in the industry. We're really good at market transitions. How many of you followed Cisco 10 years or more? How many of the transitions that we said were going to happen didn't happen? Only one list, almost none. And that's because I missed executed. It wasn't that the vision was off. It should have been in the cloud, and that's what we should have moved to smartphones. So the probabilities on the number of networking companies consolidating, the number of IT companies consolidating, across architecture, because IT as a service is just saying very nicely that I've got to cut my OpEx and I've got to cut my CapEx where I can. And yet, people are saying, how do you give me solutions faster? So I think the odds on the architecture playing out extremely high, and I think you're seeing that in the results of our competitors. And candidly, I was a little bit surprised, but many of them are giving us credit for that, which makes it even tougher on them. And I think you're going to see us accelerate it. Now, the vision and strategy is what we've worked on for 5 and 10 years. The execution, being critical myself, is something that we did not have as consistency across Cisco as I would like to see. And I wish I'd been in Gary as the COO a couple of years earlier, because execution and prioritization with proper measurement is key. Gary, just your thoughts on how we're going to do that and how we keep that up to the vision.
So I think a lot of the things that you've already heard us say that we're going to do, that we've done, like we've narrowed our focus on the things that are really core that tie directly back to that vision and strategy and key transitions going on in the market, right? John laid out those areas this morning. That's what we're focused on. So as we run the business, and I would say the entire leadership team is very, very clear on what the vision is and what the strategy is and how they tie that to their individual functions and areas of responsibility. Tighter than it's ever been. Very disciplined reviews of how we're making progress against us every quarter with get well plans as well as the changes that we need to make. The hard part here is with these transitions, freeing up that offense, because as we make acquisitions, as we put more and more in these new areas, where do you get that from? Especially in the market, even though we're growing ahead of our peers, where that growth is not generating that. So that's the balance spend an awful lot of time prioritizing, reprioritizing, and turning those knobs that we have. But today, we have much better visibility into what we're selling, where it's going, and what we're going to have to spend as we go in. 3 years plan tied to workforce plan, tied to execution plan. That's high level. Okay?
Hi, John. I'm Pablo from Buenos Aires. Right now, I see that the Cisco stock is between 360 cents. 1 year ago, when we were here, was less than 10% cheaper. So last year was cheaper, the stock. My question is, right now, is cheaper the stock?
Okay, so let me.
Well, stock price.
Yeah, no, he's saying it's gained 30%, it's actually gained more than a year ago. But is it still a cheap stock? So I know how you're going to answer this.
Okay, so our stock is over the last year going up about 49%. We'd had 9 record quarters in a row, and the stock hadn't moved as much. I think the last quarter the market got that we were winning architecture. We were seriously going to get a shot at becoming the top IT player. Not would we be able to be one of the 5, but the top IT player on that. And they began to see us leave behind our peers and be able to address some of the concerns. If you believe that the growth of the company is in the mid-single digits consistently with these type of margins, many industry analysts would say that it's a very good buy. In fact, my biggest critic, Jim Cramer on CNBC, recommended it today. Again. And so I think it's purely an issue of, do we have our markets right? Do we have our growth aspirations right? Do we get the industry market transitions right? And do we get our partner strategy right? If we do, I think we've got a tremendously bright future. There's a question back here, yes.
Christine Bennett with CRN US.
Yes.
John, you mentioned near the end of your talk this morning that you wanted to pump more resources into Cisco's sales force to go after some market opportunities that were either fairly untapped or at least not tapped to their fullest. So I was just wondering if you could add a little color around what resources specifically you'd like to see added, either direct or indirect, and what some of those, again, I don't know if untapped is the best word, but what are some of those markets or those opportunities out there that you'd really like to go after more aggressively?
Sure. I was wondering if somebody picked that up because that was not subtle. If you watch and you consider our sales force, how many sales reps do we have approximately, Rob?
Sales reps?
Account managers?
8,000.
So, channel and the group. So we were talking probably between AMs and SEs, an increase of over 400. That's a pretty good number in today's market. And productivity-wise, it's very easy. In certain emerging countries around the world, productivity of $6 million per sales rep in SE. In the U.S., it's $10 million per sales rep in SE. What you're seeing in this market is you don't get as large a skill outlay as you normally do. In other words, you're getting more in the pipeline to make your numbers, as many of our peers found out this last quarter. And we're also seeing where we add resources, they come up to almost full productivity as quickly as 9 months. So you're going to see us make the investments, and we're going to look for our partners to do the same thing selectively. It will vary by country around the world, and it will vary actually by city within country and by industry vertical. Rob, would you add to that?
Yeah, I actually think as well, John, we've done fantastic performance in the mid-market right now, and you saw that in the messages that both Bruce and Edison delivered. So how we get to that mid-market, continue to leverage our distributors that reach our VARs very aggressively. I mentioned earlier, our distributors are finding the Cisco portfolio as one of a very few number of their distribution lines that's actually growing right now. So we see a lot of momentum as well in distribution to reach that mid-market enterprise and commercial marketplace, and that's where we're investing as well.
Yeah, I think in that same light, I hope you heard Bruce talk about what we're doing. This may not be widely known, but the facts are we've opened up our training program to our channel partners. So it's a 1-year program, 90 days, they're at Cisco, they go through the same training as our salespeople. So that's a bigger scaling, if you will. The other thing that we're doing is when our people that apply for open positions at Cisco, the ones that we don't take in, we make that site available to our partners so that they can recruit all the people who want to come to Cisco. And that's really helped them scale up and get the kind of talent that they need as well. So those are two other areas.
So therefore, my question is, for us smaller channel partners are concerned, on your way to the number one, whatever goal you see for the channel partners, smaller channel partner who are selling products, now, what is their evolution path to help you achieve the number?
In terms of, I missed the first
So I think
part.
the smaller channel partner, John, if
Oh, we're talking purely size, not specific.
Yeah, so
name.
let me
Okay,
take
good.
a picture.
Okay.
There's a huge business out there of helping customers solve problems, switching and routing and wireless and all those capabilities. Also, there's a business model change. So you see Meraki as an example. We brought that forward, and you heard Edison talk about a Meraki program to enable our partners to take that off the market. Same thing with WebEx, which is the vast majority of that capability sold through our partners. So there's a huge role for our smaller VARs to play in this marketplace, both in leveraging Cisco's architectural approach, as well as leveraging some of the transitions to SaaS and cloud. And our view is very simple. Every part of our channel ecosystem is part of our reach to the marketplace, and they all play an absolutely critical part in our coverage of the marketplace. So I think there's a role for all of our partners. And I think, John, you share that perspective.
Completely do. I think you actually see, instead of our low-end channels contract, they will expand. Because as you move into area, local expertise is often what especially mid-tier customers want. So I think it's more what you will see us grow. It's also where the jobs will be created. So I actually see our partners increasing in that category. What we've got to do, as Gary alluded to, and do a better job of helping them go where the market's going, not where it's been. All the way back to the far left.
Juan Carlos Bernate from Canal Informático, Colombia. We've heard a lot about the mid-market, and we know Cisco is very strong in the big market. But what about the small market, those companies of less than 100 employees, that they are very profitability, and they make a lot of money, but where are they?
So the majority of job growth actually on the world is small companies below 100. So you'll see us focus on mid-market, but you also saw my chart on small business as well as commercial, which I consider above mid-market. So we will address all segments of that. The very low end, i.e. sub 100, will be serviced entirely through channels, not through any pull-through type of approach. And this goes back to the question, often the small resellers and channel partners are the best to get at that market. So it's an area we're very much interested in, but it will be entirely channel delivered.
Going back to that, reaching towards that number one position, there are two main pillars. Yeah, partners is one, but the enterprise users, the CIO. So when you are looking at business transformation of the partners, at the same time, there need to be a business transformation of the CIOs also. So what role Cisco is playing in aligning the two? And I'm asking for specific initiatives, because unless the two are not aligned, things might not work. So how you are synchronizing the two, and what are the specific initiatives behind that?
So we have a number of sessions designed for CIOs, and not for us to teach them, but for us to learn together. The statement was made on a stage today. Gartner, for example, believes that up to 90% of the purchasing will come outside of the CIO department, etc. I personally think that only happens if the CIOs mis-execute. And so the way that you'll see us go to market is however our customers want to buy. So we will sell both through and to the CIO, to the business leads, and to the CEO. And then they'll determine how they purchase within it. But I think the CIOs of today have to reorganize their structure. They have to organize around speed. They have to think more about solutions than the way perhaps storage and processors and other things were done in the past. And so the organizations have to evolve. I'm actually an optimist on how that's going to occur, and I'm talking at the research board on Thursday to probably 100 out of the top 200 CIOs in the world. That will be my message on it.
But how do you bring around any initiatives, the partners and the CIOs on the same table?
Yeah.
What focuses Cisco?
We might all have a perspective on this. I'm going to let Gary go with his.
So there's a number of things. and activities. We spend an awful lot of time with those large enterprise CIOs. We have a twice-a-year Global Customer Advisory Board. We share that information out. Our very top accounts not only have an executive sponsor, and Rob and John and I all have our own accounts, we have someone from Cisco IT who's been through transformation work. But more and more of the CIOs, when they come to visit us, either in Bedfont Lakes or in Richardson, Texas, or San Jose headquarters for briefings, bring their board of directors or bring their CFO, their COO, and we sit down and talk to them about the transformations we see, what we're doing as a company, the investments we're making, how we're freeing up that capacity as a company, the transformation we've been through. And so we're doing an awful lot. Most of the briefings I do today has nothing to do with services or technology. It's about transformation and how we're focusing and retraining people.
I was just going to say the Internet of Things conversation absolutely forces those two players to come together. The CIO generally hasn't served the requirements of the business technology, they've serviced information technology. And I think, John, as we start to see those meetings happen, as we saw with CIOs and CEOs, the CEOs get technology will help them transform how their businesses run, but Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything forces that conversation between the business and the CIO. And I think we can lead in those transformational conversations.
Bottom line, we're going to sell at all levels from the customer, from the business need to the CEO, but we will partner with the CIO, and that's how we'll continue to go to market in terms of the overall approach. But we'll have our partners with us each step of the way. Please.
Hi, I'm Sam from CRN UK. I was wondering if you could clarify your position on the Microsoft Skype deal and the EU, and offer any insight into how damaging you think it could be if the deal damaging for Cisco and other competitors if it goes ahead without any concessions or iterations.
Sure. Well, first, in regards to Microsoft and the Skype deal, we're not objecting to the combination. We are saying in this industry, when you have huge proprietary strengths, you ought to have to open up and let other participants occur to their operating systems, both in the desktops, with Skype, etc. Microsoft has that on our acquisitions, Tandberg and Star. And all we're saying is create a level playing field, not just for your large peers such as Cisco who are willing to speak up, but for the small players who can get locked out very much. So no objection to the issue about the combination, just an objection strong bias that it damages competition, creates unfair advantages when you lock out players from interoperability. And interoperability does not mean 5 or 6 clicks. It's got to be 1 click, because otherwise nobody's going to go through it. So we'll see how this one plays out. I think if the U.S. regulators had to do over, they might have done something different. And interoperability, I think, is a core thing, core issue going forward. You watch what we're going to do. We're going to support all 4 hypervisors in this market. We're going to support all BYOD devices. We're going to support both the most likely winners, whether it's Android or iOS, plus all the other players within it, including Microsoft in terms of direction. I think that is so important on not just the Internet of Things. Understand the key premises going on. Everything's moving to IP. What was the most basic issue with the Internet? Anyone to any content and proper security. So this, I think, does damage the industry. And again, I think the regulatory agencies ought to take a very hard look if they want to do that. Cisco will be fine either way, but it will damage our ability to be effective for our customers, and it will damage candidates, fishing small players.
Hi, Robert Dutch, and Buzz Enunciate. Well, I'm sure it's being the #1 IT company status, something you guys have been talking about for quite some time. It's not something that I've heard you speak about, certainly with the level, certainly with the level of volume that you made the case today. I'm curious why this point in time to really start flying that line.
So you're absolutely right. Our dreams and aspirations really started all the way back in the early 90s, changing the way the world works, lives, learns, and plays. And everybody said, you don't understand, you're a router company. You talk to government leaders around the world. It doesn't matter, and by the way, I'll be in all these locations this next week, or 2 weeks, in China, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, and Russia, the government leaders get it. And when President Obama went to Israel as an example, he heard from Shimon Peres and Netanyahu how integral Cisco was in terms of inclusion, education of all the population, etc. When he talked to President Abbas from Palestine, he heard the same thing in terms of what we do in the Arab world. And so our ability really to make this transition has been in the works for quite a while. What is different is that when you start to move, you've got to outline your vision to your partners, you've got to outline it to your customers, and then you've got to be filling in the pieces. There's an inflection point. There's a void at the top. The surprising thing is when you talk to CIOs, you know who the #1 rated IT communications company is, almost without exception, Cisco. You know how long we've been there? 10 years. But what has happened is the traditional IT players have said, and that 800 group pound gorilla, I'm an ERP company, or I'm a data center company, or in our case, we did transition, a switching or a router company. And the areas that are going to determine the future is how do you play architecturally, and how do you move into mobility, how do you move into data analytics, how do you move into Internet of Things, next generation security, software, and everything as a service. So we see the window there, and we're clearly going to go for it. And just as a reminder, and this is what we're going to do a better job of, when either competitors, big or small, put out, we're going to beat Cisco, we remind people the track record has not been good at all for anyone on that. And you saw the numbers. When you're 18 product families, you're #1 in 13 of them. You gain share in 9 of the top 10 categories. We're tough. And we're going to be more direct in addressing challenges to us, both in achieving our goals with our partners, with data. And in hindsight, we should have done that quicker in software-defined networks, which you now see us pick up. But we'll address it very quickly with IT as a service and with the purchase by the drink or different consumption models. I'm getting the signal I'm running out of time. So what we will do, since I'm still CEO, is that we'll take a couple more questions. If the questions are quick, our answers will be quick. And we'll do just a couple more. We can do everything, please.
John, from the student of Moscow, just before we went, we shall read on the drug that the person who will live to 300 years from now, how it can work that it should be used.
Well, the question is, there's a lot of speculation about how old companies will be and people will be. And I personally, I come from a family with 2 doctors. I think you're going to see tremendous improvements in the healthcare. And it won't be 1/3 of the kids being born today that make 100. I think it's going to be way over 50%. In terms of companies, the average company's life expectancy is only going to be 20 years. And the leadership to stay on the top has very rarely even lasted for 10 years. The reason Cisco's done it for 2 decades and attempting to go at not just the 3rd for #1 in communications, but literally moving IT, is we know how to reinvent ourselves, we know how to catch market transitions, we know how to take advantage of that. And I think it's actually a fascinating parallel between what you do to live long as a person and what you do to live long as a company.
So we don't know.
Would I love to live to be 300 years, of course?
As long as he can play golf.
Yes. And watch these guys run the company.
So you're not prolonging your transition by another 100 years.
That's what we said earlier. That's a headline. It's 2 to 4 years from next summer.
You mentioned SDN a few times, and you know, it's thought generally in the industry to be an abstraction layer that allows for many different configurations of communications here, and yet your message really stresses the centricity of Cisco-specific ASICs. So, on the one hand, I'm sure many of your partners are excited about you opening up 700 plus APIs, and I'm wondering, on the other hand, you're getting pushback on the fact that your insistence that your ASICs be the fundamental part of the architecture makes it difficult or impossible to integrate in third-party music.
Don't necessarily agree with the second part of the question, but I may have Rob answer it, and then I may add some color to it.
So we're going to discuss this tomorrow morning, right after Padma's discussion. I'll go into this conversation a little bit more deeply. And you know what? I think the most important thing is all the energy has been around the data center. Software defined, something in the data center. How this is going to change switching and all the rest of the stuff. Actually, I'll just say now, and we'll talk about this in more detail tomorrow, this software defined linkage to infrastructure and applications is end-to-end. It's wide area, it's carrier backbone, it's the mobile edge, it's the data center. And our strategy will be end-to-end, comprehensive, not about virtualizing or separating the switching layer in the data center, but end-to-end, very comprehensive. Part of the performance of scale that's required for very large-scale virtualization, for massively scalable data centers, big content providers, or very large-scale hybrid clouds, needs the integration with ASICs to get the scale of performance. We'll lay some of those constructs out tomorrow.
Yeah, key takeaway is we will interface to anyone, any standard or de facto standard, and everybody can participate. That's what the internet's about. We're going to add tremendous advantages of doing that over Cisco architecture, software, and silicon. Yes, sir.
Isn't it high time that the Cisco should have end-user computing device in a complete end-to-end?
We're going to put processor capability all the way from the combination of clouds all the way down to an end-user device. And we already have almost all of our $180 billion of install base programmable. Now, for those who like to get into detail, you look at the merchant silicon, they put the features into the ASICs. We have, from the very beginning, built our ASICs to add value on top of. So we've been doing programmability through this for 2 decades. Huge competitive advantage in terms of transitions. Let me ask you, was this worthwhile? Did you throw your candid enough on it?
Yeah.
That's right, I'll let you laugh in a second. Were we candid enough on the answers?
Yeah.
Next year, would you like to go another 15 minutes, or
Yes.
would it help? Because getting on a topic and staying with it helps us learn. And while selfishly, we always want to help you so that you can position, you accomplish your goals for coming here, we also want to learn from you. How many of you, is this your first conference coming to? How many of the second partner conference? How many of the third? How many of you 5 or more? So for those who have attended at least one before this, I'm going to ask you, how would you rate this one? Better than the others you've attended? About the same? Less? How many would you rate it better than the others you've attended? How many about the same? How many worse? Okay. So it's interesting. Now, right after the first session today, I went through about 200 of the results, and it looked like we were going to get our highest scores ever for the first day. Then we just got the first input from 1,700, and it has been our highest first day type of approach. Now the key is, can we maintain the momentum, and can we meet the partners' needs? I want to thank you all for the time. If you only take one message away, we are completely committed to a channel-centric strategy, partner-centric across the board. I hope that came through.